So this guy brags he's been all around Europe. Someone asks which countries. He goes, oh, Italy, Spain, and Paris. Dead serious. When pressed, he admits he thought Europe was a country, not a continent. Then, to top it off, he proudly says, I flew over the English Ocean to get there. That's right, the Atlantic magically rebranded. The kicker? He pulls out his phone to prove it, showing a blurry picture of the Eiffel Tower with the caption, My favorite part of Europe, Paris City, Italy. Geography teachers everywhere just retired on the spot. At a family reunion, someone argued that Mexico was part of Texas. He swore he'd seen proof on a TV documentary. Turns out he'd watched a cowboy movie filmed in Mexico and assumed they were interchangeable. His logic? If I can drive to Mexico from Texas in a few hours, it must be inside Texas. When corrected, he doubled down. It's like a giant shopping mall. Mexico is the food court of Texas. Nobody knew whether to laugh, cry, or hand him a globe. Later, he seriously asked if they took dollars in Mexican County. Bless his confused heart. A guy once explained how he saved money flying to Hawaii. Instead of crossing the Pacific, I took a flight across the Atlantic. It's shorter. He argued that if you just go the other way around the planet, it takes less time. He said, it's like taking the back roads instead of the freeway, way faster. When people pointed out the Earth is round, he shot back. That's exactly why it works. Round things always have shortcuts. At that point, someone suggested he test his theory with a globe. He spun it once and said, see, I told you. One proud vacationer announced, we're driving to Alaska next summer. Fair enough, until he revealed his route. Straight through California, then a right turn at Seattle, and boom, Alaska. When someone asked if he realized Alaska isn't directly attached that way, he replied, it's up there on the map, so it's like a short drive north. He even bragged he'd do it in 2 days tops. The poor guy didn't know Canada was in the way. When informed, he panicked. Wait, we need passports to reach Alaska? That's insane. Why would America put Alaska behind Canada? In a workplace trivia game, someone asked, what's the capital of Africa? Without hesitation, a guy yelled, Africa City. Everyone laughed, but he insisted Africa was a single country. His evidence? Why else would all the animals be the same? Lions, zebras, giraffes. It's one big safari park. When someone explained there are 54 countries, he looked betrayed, like geography had personally lied to him. Later, he was overheard planning a vacation. I'm visiting Africa, all of it, in 2 weeks. Should be enough time to see everything. Sure, buddy, pack light, it's just one hotel. One tourist insisted Florida was an island. Why? Because I had to cross a big bridge to get there. Turned out he meant driving across a causeway in Tampa. When corrected, he doubled down. Well, it feels like an island. It's hot, there are palm trees, and you need sunscreen. Sounds like an island to me. Someone tried to explain peninsulas, but he wasn't having it. Peninsula? That's just a fancy way of saying island that's too proud to admit it. Imagine his face when he found out Alaska wasn't an island at all. During a road trip through Kansas, a passenger asked when they'd reach the Middle East. The driver thought he meant the Midwest and said, we're already here. The guy got excited, pulled out his phone, and started taking pictures of cornfields, claiming he was in Iraq territory. Later, he told everyone at home that he had visited the Middle East of America. When someone laughed and explained, he muttered, well, Kansas and Qatar both start with Q sounds anyway. No one had the heart to correct him that Kansas doesn't start with a Q. At a dinner party, a man bragged he'd seen Japan from the Jersey Shore. On a clear day, you just look east, and there it is. Those blinking lights? That's Tokyo. Everyone thought he was joking, but he was dead serious. When someone explained it's thousands of miles across the Pacific, he said, maps exaggerate. The world's not that big. He even pulled out a flat paper map and folded it, lining New Jersey up with Japan. See? Right across the water. Suddenly, origami became a scientific method, and geography cried itself to sleep. A woman once argued Canada was part of the United States. Her proof? It's just America's hat. If it sits on top, it belongs to us. She insisted borders were more like clothing seams than actual boundaries. Besides, she added, if Canada were its own country, why would they speak English? Someone reminded her about French in Quebec, and she gasped. So they made up a whole new language just to pretend they're different? She later asked if Canadians had to rent space from America to live there. A whole nation reduced to accessory wear. In a bar trivia game, the question was, which ocean is on the west coast of the U.S.? A guy confidently shouted, the Atlantic. When corrected, he argued, they both connect anyway, so it's basically the same ocean, just a different side. Then he added, think of it like a swimming pool. You can't tell one end from the other. When his team lost points, he was furious. You're punishing me for thinking outside the box. Geography isn't abstract art, buddy. Even his beer seemed embarrassed for him. One man proudly told his friends he visited Mount Rushmore on his trip to Washington, D.C. When asked how he got there, he said, it was just a short drive from the White House, like 10 minutes tops. The group exchanged looks, but let him finish. He then claimed George Washington's nose looked bigger in real life. Later, when shown a map, he refused to believe South Dakota even existed. Come on, he said. There's no way people live in a place called Dakota. Sounds like a furniture store, not a state. A teenager once argued Texas was bigger than Australia. His reasoning? Everything's bigger in Texas, duh. When told Australia is a continent, not just a country, he smirked. That's just clever marketing. Texans don't need to brag with words like continent. We just are. He even tried proving it by stretching his Texas-shaped keychain over a globe. See? It covers almost the whole Pacific. Everyone laughed, but he doubled down. Why would Australia even need that much space? Kangaroos don't take up real estate. The confidence was as oversized as the state slogan. A tourist in London asked where to find the real London Bridge. Locals pointed at the one spanning the Thames, but she shook her head. No, I mean the one in Las Vegas. She insisted the Vegas version was authentic and the UK's was just a knockoff. When corrected, she frowned. Then why would they call it London Bridge if it's not in London, Nevada? Later, she posted photos captioned, finally saw the fake London Bridge in England. Not as cool as the original in Vegas. Imagine confusing Britain with a theme park. During a heated debate about borders, one guy claimed the Great Wall was in Mexico. Why else would they call it the Great Wall? It's obviously about keeping people out. Someone pointed out it's actually in China, but he refused to believe it. Come on, China's too far away. That wall wouldn't even fit on their tiny maps. When asked how long he thought it was, he shrugged. Like 20 miles, maybe? Enough to cover Texas. He later admitted he thought Beijing was a Mexican beer brand. Geography and history both gave up that day. Back in the 1500s, maps sometimes showed California as an island. But one guy in 2024 apparently didn't get the update. He told people California wasn't attached to America at all. You ever drive down the Pacific Coast Highway? It feels like you're on an island. He even claimed earthquakes happened because the bridge between California and the rest of the U.S. was shaky. When corrected, he said, then how do you explain Hollywood being so different? Islands always have their own culture. He was half right, but not for the reason he thought. At the DMV, a woman filling out paperwork wrote, Africa understate. When the clerk corrected her, she argued, but my cousin's from Africa, so it must be a state, like Florida. The clerk tried to explain it's a continent with 54 countries. She rolled her eyes. So now you're telling me Florida has 54 cities? Same thing. Later, she asked if she needed special plates to drive back to Africa and whether tolls applied. When someone suggested a globe, she sighed. Globes are just round maps to confuse people. I prefer flat maps. In a classroom map quiz, a guy placed Hawaii right next to Maine. When asked why, he proudly said, that's where it is on the map. Of course, he'd been looking at one of those inset boxes teachers use for space. When corrected, he got annoyed. Then why would they put it there if it's not actually there? Maps shouldn't lie. He later insisted his friend flew from Boston to Honolulu in 2 hours because the plane just crossed a little pond. Pond, ocean, it's all water, right? Cartographers collectively facepalmed that day. One tourist in Anchorage told a local he wanted to walk to Russia. I mean, it's right next door on the map. The local explained the Bering Strait, but the tourist said, that's just a river, I'll swim it. When told it's freezing and about 50 miles across at its narrowest, he replied, so, like, a morning jog? He even packed granola bars for the trip. Later, he posted, disappointed. Turns out Russia doesn't allow walkers at the border. Guess they don't want the tourism. He was probably one frostbite away from international news. A couple signed up for an Antarctic cruise. They boarded in Miami, expecting to see penguins within a day or two. When the ship went to the Bahamas instead, they complained to staff. Where are the icebergs? The crew explained Antarctica was thousands of miles south. The couple demanded a refund. You can't just change continents mid-trip. They even asked if the captain could swing by Antarctica on the way back. Later, they wrote a review. Great service, but zero penguins. False advertising. Safe to say, their geography education melted faster than sea ice. During a barbecue, someone proudly announced Puerto Rico became the 51st state last year. When corrected that it's still a territory, he said, same thing. If it's got a Walmart, it's a state. Someone asked if he could name all 50 states first. He listed Texas, California, New York, Florida, then started naming cities like Chicago, Miami, and Dallas. He finally gave up at 23. Look, it doesn't matter. Puerto Rico's basically just Hawaii with more Spanish. The poor island deserved better than being reduced to a misplaced trivia answer over potato salad. A man once argued the Mississippi River wasn't a river at all. It was the ocean. His logic? It's way too wide for a river. If you can't see the other side, that's an ocean. When told oceans have salt water, he sipped from a souvenir bottle and said, tastes salty enough to me. Someone pointed out he'd grabbed mineral water from Walmart, not river water. He shrugged. Well, it's all connected anyway. Rivers, oceans, lakes, it's one big puddle. He later bragged about swimming the Atlantic in Missouri. The riverbank ducks just shook their heads. At a trivia night, a contestant insisted Europe was one of the 50 U.S. states. Think about it, she said. Europe has cities like London, Paris, and Rome. America loves naming states after places. When someone corrected her, she fired back. Then why do we have New Jersey, New York, and New Mexico? Clearly Europe was the original. The host nearly fell off his chair. She ended her rant with, fine, if Europe isn't a state, it should be. It'd make traveling way easier. Geography textbooks around the country quietly begged for mercy. A student proudly gave a presentation about Brazil being the biggest country in Africa. His slides even showed Christ the Redeemer next to lions and elephants. The teacher asked where he got his information. Google Images, he said confidently. When told Brazil is in South America, he panicked. Then why do they speak Portuguese like in Africa? The teacher tried explaining colonization, but the kid whispered, sounds made up. I bet Africa stole Brazil from America. The presentation ended with polite applause, mostly because no one had the energy to unpack all that nonsense. One woman swore she visited the desert in Canada. When asked where, she said Toronto. She explained, it was super hot when I went, like 95 degrees, so obviously desert climate. Locals tried to tell her deserts aren't defined by heat alone, but by low rainfall. She replied, that's just science trying to confuse people. If I sweat, it's a desert. She even posted selfies captioned, Toronto Desert Adventure. Move over, Sahara. Canadians laughed for weeks. To this day, she insists she discovered a hidden desert that meteorologists are conspiring to keep secret. During a Geography B, a contestant was asked to name a continent. He confidently answered, Asia City. When the judge corrected him, he argued, well, Asia sounds like a city. Like, I flew into Asia last week. Someone explained Asia is the largest continent. He grinned. Even better. It must be the world's biggest city. Later, when asked what country Tokyo is in, he said, easy, Asia. The poor judge gave up, handed him a globe, and told him to study. The contestant pointed at Australia instead and said, see, that's Asia City.